From the 305 to the 303, this is TCSP. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Brian and the Casually Serious Band.
Welcome to the Casually Serious Podcast. Today, we speak about the greatest sketch comedy shows of all time. Holy shnikes, Batman. Hey,
that's a lot of people.
Hey, can we go to the
Yeah,
thank you.
no, that's better.
God.
Woo!
Hey, listen, this is the problem. All right, look, we don't have a lot of money. The very few sponsors we had, the very first few episodes we had, the smoking, the cannabis mouthpiece, all those people, they're off board. They're off board simply because they just blew the hell up, and it's not like they have any less feelings for us, but that we just basically all we can afford is some of these interns to help us out, and we apologize for the close-up. None of us have had our Biore pads today. We have not dealt with any Stridex products, anything like that, so we apologize for the close-ups. But anyway, KenMan, the Casually Serious Podcast, how the hell are you doing today, man?
Man, this is a great week. I mean, I'm sure everybody's already noticing that we're up here with our prospective football teams behind us because it was NFL draft week last Thursday and over the weekend. And man, I'm sorry. I know we're talking about sketch comedy today, but Bob and I are huge football fans, and we're both very proud of our teams and what they did this week. So that's the little interlude into this show.
Did you hear that? Somebody just tied in the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins to a comedy joke. I don't know how you didn't hear that. As soon as you said it, like at least 13 people that are watching said that. They joked about our teams. There could be a tie-in there, if I'm being honest. We know this.
There definitely could, and we're fine. We're fine with it. We're perfectly good with this. Unapologetic fans, regardless of outcomes, decisions, or drafts. Even though this was a good one for the Dolphins.
You know what, man? I know for a fact that it was. There's only a couple teams that I pay attention to. I'm forced to pay attention to the Miami Dolphin picks because I'm from Miami, and friends like you, Parsons, a bunch of people, they'll let me know what's going on. And it's a good thing. I want my friends to be happy and whatnot, unless they are friends of mine that are Eagles fans, Giants fans, or Washington football team fans. Everybody else, have at it, man. I'm glad you got what you needed. Was your first round pick what you thought your first round pick was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually happy with any of those receivers that were going in the top, and whether we got Pitts, Waddle, Chase, Devontae, I was good with any of them. And it seems that we got the one that, according to our coaching staff and front office, that they had number one, regardless, no matter if all four were there, which I doubt because I think they would have taken Pitts. But definitely Waddle, I'm thrilled with. Fastest guy in the draft, so that's not even an opinion. That's a fact. So you get the fastest guy straight away. Doesn't always mean it's going to be results, but this guy's produced at a high level at Alabama, so super psyched for him. Definitely love what they did trading back as well and getting the picks for next year. Just everything the organization has been doing over the past couple years since Flores has taken over has been spectacular. And as a Dolphin fan, I'm sorry, I'm just so excited because we've just had such mediocrity for so long. It's been so stagnant with just terrible drafts, which just doom an organization. And it's been too long. And finally, we've got a vision, and the fans can see it. It's spectacular. It's incredible what they're doing. They're doing a rebuild very similar to what the Buffalo Bills are doing. I have been saying for the past few years, the Dolphins are like a year or two behind the Buffalo Bills. And Bills are going to be spectacular and even better this coming season. And they're building right. And that's the way you need to build a football team in today's NFL. I see the Dolphins doing the same as them. And now the Jets have the right kind of staff, the way that they drafted as well, and their coach and Robert Saleh, that I think they're also doing. The AFC East, man, you better watch out. These things are changing in that division, and it's not about the Patriots anymore. That's the crazy part.
Well, I will go ahead and champion my Cowboys for doing not only addressing the need for defense with the 28th ranked defense last year, but for the first time in Dallas Cowboys history, picking defense for all of their first 6 picks. It's never happened before, and we took all defense for this draft, pretty much, give or take. Maybe we had I think we got a wide receiver, maybe someone else that we picked that was not a defense, but literally all defense. And so I applaud Jerry, Will, Steven, everybody in the front office for not only doing what they needed to do, but at least showing the fans that you're willing to commit. I think the fact that we have Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator now, he's able to step back out of a head coach thing and go back into his defensive coordinator realm, I think is going to be great for him. And I think this year, a non-COVID year, the Cowboy fan base will be able to evaluate Mike McCarthy in a much more realistic light. I think last year was a wash for a lot of people. We had 22 injuries at one point last year. So I'm ready to see us do some great things. The young players always come in and make the old players obsolete because players like Micah Parsons, our first round pick, are running I think he's 235. He runs a 4.3 40 as a linebacker. They were ready to put him on punt return until he decided to bow out of last season. There's a lot of different players and a lot of different kind of player types coming into the league right now. It's amazing. Really, really happy. You're happy. I'm happy. But let's dive into some of these sketch comedy shows, man. Do you have any memories in particular of watching them, or were they just something that you wind up hearing in the background and then getting a hold of?
Well, I think it's like a lot of comedy, and it's very subjective. And these kind of shows in particular, I think, really go to that because even within the show, you can have certain sketches that are hilarious. I mean, you're just laughing so hard that as they go into the next one, you still have that smile on your face and your cheeks are all stuck up like that because you're laughing so hard from that first one. And you're going into the next one and you got a big smile, but you're not laughing yet. And you're kind of like, where's this one going? And it's just not good. So sketch comedy, I think, is just, and to me, maybe the next person thought that was funny, but it is very subjective. So it's hard to rate this kind of stuff. But obviously SNL had always been there. It's been around so long. I think that's probably my first introduction to really knowing that that's what that show was all about. So, and what they were doing was just individual sketches. And so that's certainly where I would go with it first. And then, back looking at In Living Color, Mad TV, all those kind of shows that we started to watch as well were great. And until the greatest of all time came along. And, we're going to talk about that one soon too.
We're going to talk about almost all of them, to be quite honest.
The good ones.
Yeah, all the ones that I it's crazy.
Well,
like I said, we think they are amazing, and then I went ahead and did a bunch of research on what other people thought the top 50, 100 were, and ours were on par with all of them. So, there's also a lot of probably 10 that I've never heard of, and we might get into those later. But let's start off with the one that, for myself personally, when little Bobby was plopped down in front of a television as a kid, started watching this show, and it changed his life. So. This is not in any particular order. This is sort of chronological, but not really. So don't get all caught up in the order. Get caught up in the comedy. So I don't think there's any possible way for anybody in the world to talk about sketch comedy without talking about Carol Burnett. The Carol Burnett show it was just something that I remember laughing at until I cried as a kid. Starring Carol Burnett, Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Tim Conway, and Lyle Wagner, with that voice, by the way. And everyone remembers the intro with the mop. It was something that I just remember. I don't know if it was a post-dinner or pre-dinner show. I can never get those memories correct, but it didn't matter. I remember watching it. I remember her coming downstairs with the drapes on her shoulders, and I guess it was a Gone with the Wind sort of parody. I don't really remember the theme of it, but I remember just so much stuff, and her huge maniacal face, and she was such a beautiful figure to me. And then Vicki Lawrence, and obviously their skit, The Family, which eventually turned into Mama's Family, which was actually we highlighted last week. But it was amazing to see these folks do what they did, and no matter what, they always found a way to break each other up on the set. It was really the first time I remember seeing actors purposely try and screw each other up with their lines and laugh. And Carol Burnett will always have a place in my heart forever. It's the one I remember first.
It was definitely a post-dinner show because I remember watching this show at the end of the night. This would always be the show we'd
Awesome.
also watch at that time. And I loved it as well. I mean, honestly, I know a lot of that comedy was going over my head at that age, but Carol sold it in such a way that she was just so appealing to just anybody that was going to stop and watch and want to laugh just by her antics and the way and her facial expressions. They were incredible. The bug eyes, the whatever she would do stuff that you could have the volume down and you'd laugh. So I think that was the introduction to that type of comedy for me at a young age, where I was able to see what they were doing with these short skits and really understand what it took to do that kind of work. And it really does take an incredible actor or actress to do this work. And she was perfect for it. And even when she was hosting in the beginning, before she would start the skits, you got to see her as a real person. And that's what made this show even better, is that you did see the real person behind the actress that was about to go and just portray all these different roles and do it absolutely incredibly and hilariously more than anything else.
What's amazing is, and you were dead right about everything you just said, man. I cannot disagree with you on any of that, man. And what you said also, the beginning, her monologue was something besides her doing the Tarzan yell, which I'm not even going to try and friggin' replicate. She had herself a pair of pipes that could do that because she was yelling that. But I remember one time in particular, she asked for an audience member that asked her to do it, and she asked her name, and the lady said Teresa Renteria, and Carol Burnett went back and forth on about, oh, your name rhymes, Teresa Renteria. And you know what's funny is I think that lady became popular simply because of that monologue that she's just said her name. If you Google it, you'll definitely find
That's
it.
funny.
But it was one of those weird things. She had amazing interaction with the studio audience, and it was just it was so pure and organic, and it never seemed like set up in any way. And
I forgot about the
Tarzan
yell. The Tarzan yell was great.
Oh man, yeah, it was almost like after a while, like they would ask and she'd be like, "No, I'm good." And then like 2 nights later, which would be I guess 2 weeks later, she would go ahead and do it, and then everyone would be like, "Oh, what you did?" I don't really even know what the origin of that was, if I'm being honest. But we didn't promise you a rose garden here, man. Just some fun. But yeah, man, we are loving sketch comedy, man. Sketch comedy does some things to us that this kind of the same thing that I believe a stand-up comedy does, and it's really not a coincidence that most of those things are tied together, especially with the stars that do it. Right. Not so much with this show though. So this next particular sketch comedy show was something that you didn't always see live. So KenMan, I'll let you run with this, but let me go ahead and list some of the actors. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, The Great Gonzo, Fozzie Bear, Swedish Chef, which is probably a little bit, well, never mind. Scooter, Statler and Waldorf, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, and of course, Beaker. So let's hear what you have to say about the Muppet Show, man. That counts as sketch comedy, dude. If anybody who says it doesn't, man, they're crazy.
Animal! I just loved Animal. That was my boy right there. Please. I mean, Muppet Show is great because this is another one of those shows where as a child, you're in front of that because you're drawn to these Muppets, which are incredible. But they're still doing this comedy that a lot of it's going over my head. And I know this because I've watched it after, in college, I went back and watched all these again where I understood things a little better. But as a kid, when these things were first coming out, my parents were watching it and they were laughing. And I probably just laughed because they were laughing and, but I don't think I got a lot of it. But this was great comedy here. And it was the way that they kind of laid this out. Obviously, it was a sketch setup. Everything was that way. But the guests that would come in, a lot of times wouldn't really know what was going to happen. And they talked a lot about this, that the guests after the show were just like, wow, they really make you feel unprepared and kind of throw you out there because they want that. And you would just see it in the kind of the way that they would react and the stuff they were doing. But it didn't matter because it's all about the Muppets. And then here is this human on stage with these Muppets. And it was just something that you'd never seen before. So as a kid, drawn to it right away. But even beyond that, watching the shows, the movies, everything with the Muppets was spectacular. I probably had at least 6 or 7 stuffed animals of these creatures. Definitely lots of structures of drum sets with animal behind it. I love this. The Muppets were absolutely spectacular. Be one of my absolute favorite shows of all time.
Muppets have a very, very, very big place in my heart, man. Matter of fact, the animal drum set was the first drum set I ever owned. And point of fact, the fabulous band leader of the person who does our intro, Dr. Brian, he actually helped me destroy that drum set in my bedroom at one point. And it was a great thing. We did it, I think, to Twisted Sister or something like that.
Nice.
So a super metal moment.
I love it. I love it.
However,
cheers to the set.
The Muppets were awesome, and I think what Henson and everyone who was involved in that show was trying to do was make sure that the humans were, like you said, very uncomfortable and unprepared, so everyone knew that it was the Muppets world. It really is what made you engrossed in all of it. It made you feel as a human that you had really nothing to do with these freaking creatures. Like they are going to exist, and you are just going to watch them exist. And it was a beautiful thing. It was a cool contrast to kind of have the human be out of place.
Right. And they did it in such a way that you were behind the scenes watching them put on a show. So it wasn't like you were really in the audience in this show. You were behind the scenes. You were watching them run around backstage and try to get people ready. And where's this one? And where's that one? And where are the chickens? And this thing's running around. And it was just mayhem always back there. And that dynamic would play out in each show as well, which is it's brilliant. I mean, the show honestly was brilliant. It was at a perfect time. It worked great. I mean, honestly, the show could be made today. They could work this out. I know they tried this a few years ago. I watched it. They did an okay job with it. They almost made it 30 Rock-ish, but it was I don't know. They could have done a little better with it, I think, at the end of the day. But it's just the Muppets are awesome. But it's all about the writing, That's really what it's going to come down to, and how you can make it funny.
And ever since then, we're talking about the 70s, they found a way even back then to sort of, and even in the movies, the Muppet movies and stuff like that, to draw adults in to be able to want to watch these movies, because it was not ever really just a child thing. It was very much a human thing. And if you were an adult, you were able to find those things. Like you're saying, they flew over your head as a kid. But once you were an adult, you were like, damn, they were saying some stuff, man. And they were showing some things that hopefully subconsciously sunk into people. And it was a wholesome message, really, most of the time, other than the extremely abusive relationship between Miss Piggy and Kermit the friggin' Frog. I don't know how anybody doesn't talk about that, but you know what? We're not going to get controversial on this show here, man.
My dad loved Miss Piggy. Miss Piggy was his love. He did a, 3,000 piece puzzle. It was huge. It took up our entire dining room table as a kid. It was he was all about Miss Piggy. Absolutely. It was kind of weird, actually, to be honest with you.
My Aunt Rhonda was as well. She lived about 3 houses down from us growing up in Kendall, and she had it all over. She had Miss Piggy all over the place, man.
Weird.
It was definitely crazy. Speaking of crazy, there are some kinds of sketch comedy shows from that sort of started it all. And really the shows that we're highlighting today, they have a very specific meaning to them. They did something. They started a movement. They contributed to the future of comedy from their show forward. And this one definitely, whether you understood it or not, definitely did that for comedy in America and across the pond. Monty Python's Flying Circus. I don't remember a hell of a lot of skits from this show. I remember my stepfather Tom saying, "Listen, if you think so and so is cool, look at this," and that applied to music, and it also applied to comedy albums, sketch comedy. He made me sit down and watch a lot of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and that wasn't a problem because I was already sort of in tune to the dry and crass humor of British humor by that time anyway. But by the time I started watching Monty Python, it was a really crazy contrast to what was going on in American sketch comedy. Not sure if anybody knows the names of them, but let's roll with them. John Cleese, Terry Gilliam, Graham Chapman, Eric Idle, and Michael Palin. And those are some actors that went on to do a lot more in American cinema and American comedy as well. Rat Race, to name a few. But there's a lot of really great stuff that Monty Python actually wound up inspiring afterwards because they just didn't care. One skit in particular was this one. This parrot has ceased to be, where a person returns a parrot to a pet store after it had died, and or actually had been sold one. Sorry. And comes back and tries to basically return it, and as they say, hilarity ensues. But Monty Python did do a lot of groundbreaking stuff, and since it was English humor, they were allowed to say and do some shit that you did not see in America. So if you had PBS or any sort of British broadcasting channel, you were able to watch Monty Python and see some naughty bits, possibly some brassieres and garter belts, which were all the rage when I was a young man. What about you, Kenny? Did you like the Monty Python Flying Circus at all?
I like the brassieres. I mean, as a kid, honestly, that dry, as you mentioned, British humor was not my thing. I didn't get it. It wasn't funny. There were things that they would do that would be funny, just because it was the action of that was going on screen, and I would laugh. And I tried to get it and get into it, but I didn't. It wasn't until I got a little bit older and actually started watching Monty Python movies. There's Holy Grail, all these movies, and these things were hilarious. I understood it. I got it. I felt it better. So I'd go back and watch some of these shows, and they were great. The episode you just saw about the parrot that ceases to exist is just hilarious. I mean, it's a great bit that goes on there. And there's a lot of these types of bits that if you really now get to know the actors a little bit better, knowing Cleese, I think, as most people do, and seeing movies like you were mentioning, Rat Race, Fish Called Wanda. There's been a lot of movies that really bring in a lot of those same kind of guys, and they do that same kind of humor. But I think it's their ability to really kind of sell it to the American crowd as well, because it is a different thing for what that humor means and feels like in Britain than it does here. And I'm not saying that as I really know how they look at it, but I'm just saying as it's sold to us when we would look at all of the shows that were coming out versus the kind of stuff that we were doing. So for me, I don't think I was old enough to get it at that time. So it wasn't really a big fit, but I did like watching stuff that was funny or pretty hot, even though they were odd brassieres back then. They were still hot for back then, I guess, because
probably just
not wearing shirts.
Very hot, not very breathable, probably. It really didn't matter back. You're right. It didn't have
a lot of polyester going on, I think.
Well, this particular sketch comedy show, oddly enough, is a show that myself and Ken are actually older than. Did that have to go in there? Because the writing is getting...
I know.
Oh, my bad. So seriously. We are, in fact, older than SNL. Not by a lot, but by a little bit. Anywho.
Thanks. Appreciate that tidbit.
Yes. For any of you folks out there in America who are not particularly well-versed with the SNL cast, we had John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Garrett Morris, Jane Curtin, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, George Coe, Lorraine Newman, and Michael O'Donoghue for the first season. I believe the second season was when Bill Murray came into the fold. Obviously, I think Chevy Chase was there from day one. But we're talking about legends, obviously. Gilda Radner, rest in peace. The one of the very first cancer deaths I think I remember hearing about, and then subsequent fight against cancer, having people contribute with which Gene Wilder, her husband, just put on for so long. So it was an amazing show that it was a very family oriented thing. It went on through the years. It went through a lot of crazy changes. I'm going to go ahead. I think I have it here. This is the cast of SNL in I believe 84, 85. You might see some names here. That's Anthony Michael Hall there, Robert Downey Jr., Joan Cusack. Sorry, it was crazy the amount of stars that came in and out. And that was actually consequently the unfunniest freaking cast ever. The worst SNL season, when I believe that was the one year where our what's his name, who's the leader of the whole thing, was gone for 1 year. and somebody else took over as the president of the network and the show leader, and it was just the worst. But throughout the years, they gave us so many amazing comedians. Obviously, going through the '90s, Will Ferrell and a bunch of amazing people. SNL is by far one of the greatest sketch comedy shows ever, and even throughout, I'd say 7 of its years that have probably been horrible, they're all still amazing, I think, in some way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do feel though that, when SNL doesn't have it, they don't have it, and they lose a lot of viewers. And it's tough because, like I said at the beginning of the show, this comedy is so subjective that what some people think are funny, other people aren't, and that could change with people's ages or what the topics are, whatever it may be. But a lot of times it takes having crazy stuff happening in the world for SNL to be funny, as we saw, through the last 4 years of Trump's presidency. If they have somebody that they can make fun of, then boom, that's great. They're throwing at their stuff at it as they can. But when there's not stuff really happening other than Weekend Update, to me, I've gone through that show and just been unimpressed. And I love Weekend Updates. I'll always watch that. But short of that, I don't know. It's kind of hit or miss. It certainly has been lately. But back in the day, I mean, Eddie Murphy obviously saved the show, and he was hilarious. You'd watch every week just to see what Eddie was doing. So, it took certain characters. And honestly, when Belushi was there, originally John Belushi, and at the first seasons with Chevy Chase, I've looked back at those shows and they're great. But at the time, again, a little younger, didn't quite get it, wasn't my thing. But I don't know. It's hit or miss for Saturday Night Live. That's what it seems to be still today. But it's still running. It's still going, and you got to give it to them. It's really, we're older than it.
We are older than SNL, no doubt. And again, you can go back, and I can say the first couple of seasons are actually pretty, not great. They're not. The comedy doesn't hold up because, like you said, it's very of the time comedy. They try not to stray too far, other than some things that sort of transcend time and genres. They can dig into those, but they really are sort of like time capsules, which is sort of cool. You can look back on all of them and look at the particular time and be like, oh, I remember this, this particular time, Phil Hartman being, Bill Clinton, and there's a lot of great memories you can look back and sort of timestamp on. But SNL did have some bad seasons, that's for sure, and they struggle for a lot of content. I like Michael Che and Colin Jost as the Weekend Update this year. They're pretty witty, pretty good stuff, man, and. Again, it all started somewhere, just like the comedians on this particular amazing sketch comedy series.
Take off, you hosers! This is awesome, man. Canadian sketch comedy, absolute hilariousness with SCTV. I mean, I had forgotten a lot about the show until Bob mentioned it pre-show, and I was so excited to be able to talk about it and my memories of this show, because you're talking John Candy, Eugene Levy, you've got Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, which are hilarious. The Great White North Report, just absolutely. To me, at that young age, I love those guys. Just talking about those hosers and just the silliness that they talked as. Their little Canadian slang and all, and it was just all about beer drinking and fishing, and just it was hilarious to me as a kid. I thought they were so funny. It was very simple. It was very simple comedy, believe it or not. But I think that kind of comedy worked because with adults they could look at that and appreciate it, but where kids could actually look at this and really laugh at this stuff as well. To this day, I mean, there's legends here. Eugene Levy is still absolutely one of my favorites. I mean, he's such an incredible actor, and a lot of what he's able to do without a script is what makes him even more incredible. There's movies he's done where there literally was a loose or no script whatsoever, and that's the kind of guy that he is, the type of actor he is. Incredibly intelligent actor, Eugene Levy.
Yeah, they all did amazing stuff. I was a massive fan of Martin Short. I think because of this show, obviously, characters like Ed Grimley, Jackie Rogers Jr., just some of the classic ones that he started doing were by the time he had his special on HBO, I was already in love with most of the folks in SCTV, and we grew up watching John Candy. Obviously, later on, Eugene Levy found some rebirth in American Pie, and these guys always found their way into a lot of our comedy. Besides John Candy, obviously, rest in peace, who did amazing stuff for years and years and years. But these guys were all just really wholesome comedians, and they didn't really need to get too crass. And comedians like Catherine O'Hara and Joe Flaherty, like we're saying, they were insane, but they always felt like they were sort of confining themselves and they could blow up at any moment. But all the Second City stuff I remember watching, which I remember watching a lot of them, was amazing, and it always made me laugh. And it didn't really feel Canadian as a lot of shows that were Canadian did. They had a very public broadcasting feel to it, where SCTV really didn't, but it was definitely dated too. You can't watch it right now and be like,
right.
It's pretty old shit, man. But
except for that Great White North report, you knew where they were coming from.
Yeah, and they obviously, those skits went on to live in various forms. It's pretty amazing. So I have a lot of memories, a lot of great memories of that, and I have a lot of great memories of this show. Actually, myself and Dr. Brian would run home from our bus in school to catch this sketch TV show. Good Lord, man. Holy cow. You can't do that on television, man. I don't necessarily, I don't know what it was that drew me to it when I first saw it.
You just said, I don't know. Where's the slime?
Right.
Our show couldn't afford slime? What happened? I thought we had the slime ready. Guys, come on, man.
He had coffee. He was going to get KTFO.
That wasn't going to work. That's not going to work.
Not going to work. You can't do it on television. Started the career of so many people.
Bob should be slimed right now. He should be covered in green right at this moment. All right, just pretend. Move on.
Who do we have on? I remember Kevin Kubachevsky in the roles. Over here to the right, we've got Alanis Morissette, obviously. Yeah. We've got Alistair, I believe. Barth. I heard that. Oh my God, man. Like, I don't know, man. There's just something about it, man. The show was crazy. And I guess because they did all this shit you couldn't do, it was just amazing. It was something that I think, it was easy to get a hold of as a kid. The sketches of them coming out of the lockers and stuff like that. It was just, it was just weird. And I liked it because it just seemed like, honestly, it seemed like there was just a bunch of kids running around doing whatever the hell they wanted to do. And if you said, I don't know, you would have slime poured all over you. It was very, very weird. It didn't make any sense, but I friggin' loved it, man.
I did too. It was a really good show, geared obviously towards kids, but it was still done masterfully. It was written very, very well. The skits were set up very well to where they can do similar skits show after show, but obviously change the content to it. So for kids, obviously, that's perfect. That's what kids want to see. So like Bob said, we'd run home to watch it because we'd want to see what was going to happen with the newest show or the newest skit that they were going to do. And it was all about kids running around being crazy, doing silly stuff. There were very few adults. And when there were, they were silly as well. So Barth, the chef, this disgusting stained creature that would supposedly be in charge of making food for everybody. We actually had a diner nearby here where we have looked and seen inside the kitchen, and we have a Barth in that diner. So yeah, we haven't eaten there since, but it was interesting. It was interesting. The Barth is an interesting creature, but that show was spectacular, and it had a lot to do with the way it was put together. It really was. Yeah. It was put together great. Being able to get child actors to sell that kind of stuff and to play into that kind of stuff is also very impressive. So although I don't, other than Alanis Morissette, know the names of any of them, I'm very impressed. They did a great job. I bought into their characters all the time and absolutely love that show as well, which fit right into the time frame of our youth. So that's why that show was perfect for folks in their, what are we now, our late 20s, I think.
Yeah, we're just around that. I remember Kevin Kubachevsky. I remember Alistair, Christine. But that's pretty much it, man. And I remember just a few scenarios, but that's it. But again, we've run home to watch it because it was just, it was insanity, man. These shows, not only did they sort of shape sketch comedy moving forward. They shaped my view of comedy and how it's approached, and sort of broke the barriers of all of it, which shows like this made you say you can't do that on television. Well, you know what? They're going to try it because they're Canadian, and we're sorry, but we're going to make you laugh, eh? And that's kind of exactly what happened.
And Nickelodeon
Canada,
was cool with it.
They were totally cool with it, man.
Right.
It started the new wave of Canadian comedy, I guess, is what we could call that one. And it went on to push these kings of the new wave of Canadian comedy to new heights. I'm gonna do it. Dare dang, dare dang, dare dang, dare ding, 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 dare ding, ding. Yeah. So I don't care. They're attorneys here. They're a pain in the ass, dude. I don't care. This was a great show. I remember being a little lost on some of them, especially some of the overtly gay humor that Scott Thompson would drive home, but a lot of them would drive home because even though obviously Scott Thompson was always very, very gay and would show it in a lot of sketches, he didn't always do that in the comedy. The beautiful thing is it didn't show homosexual comedians as just being, super gay the entire time, or whatever that 70s, 80s definition of gay was, which was flamboyant, sort of Charles Nelson Riley. But these guys did some amazing stuff. The cross-dressing was off the chart just simply because they just nailed it. But, they had sketches like, I'm crushing your head, which is just something that just goes on forever and ever. It's amazing stuff. Cabbage Head, not sure if anybody remembers Cabbage Head Man. Coasting on Charm as a doctor. That's one of my favorite ones right there, where he goes on to say that he's not even really a doctor and he just had to tell somebody that his parents died. And it's a really, really hilarious take on someone just sort of breaking into a hospital and pretending they're a surgeon. But there was just something about this show. I think it was just sort of on at the right time. The intro was very indie college rock, which I was sort of into too at the time. Like, I forgot the name of the band that did that intro, but they got very popular because of it. But it was just an amazing show, man. And these guys went on to do a lot of stuff, obviously. But if you don't know who they are, Kevin McDonald, Scott Thompson, Bruce McCulloch, Dave Foley, Mark McKinney, and you can't forget Paul Bellini, the man with the big belly that you were allowed to touch every once in a while.
This show, absolutely hilarious. I mean, it was another show just timed perfectly for our age group. But I do agree there was some humor that, not because, they were any older or different, we were any younger, but they were just very intelligent. So there was when Bob says the humor went over our heads, it's just because we weren't smart enough to get it. But at the same time, there was also humor that introduced a lot of different subcultures to America that were becoming more part of the mainstream. And that was something new in the type of shows that we were watching, and it drew me to them. I loved it. I loved the way that they were able to introduce and kind of utilize their platform in a way to kind of just show everybody how this is just about humor and this is just about comedy, and we can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh at other people, we can laugh at each other. This is what it should be about. And that show did it in spades, and just everything that it did. And it did push envelopes too. There was a lot of controversy around some of the episodes and some of the things that were said, the way that they portrayed certain people in the news at the time, who they were darn well portraying, but they would obviously say they weren't. And you can do what you want with that kind of comedy, depending on exactly what you say and how you do it. So they pushed the envelope a lot, and I think that's what also drew me to the show. It was edgy, and the humor, when I did get it, was absolutely hilarious and spot on as well. So great show, Kids in the Hall, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like America was sort of the last country to be okay with gay content and humor, where every other country was like, yeah, he's obviously gay, but who doesn't really care, dude? Like, they're fucking hilarious, man. Like, it'd be different if you were just up there representing gay people and just being really stupid. You know what I mean? But that's not what they were doing, man. They did some amazing stuff, man. Very groundbreaking. And again, I think that show in particular did things for sketch comedy that not a lot of other shows did, simply because they were allowed to do what they want. And I think Canadian broadcasting helped American broadcasting in a lot of ways because of that, because they were just like, go ahead and do what you want. It doesn't really matter, man.
just cable broadcasting in general, and knowing that we grew up with 3 stations, and to go from that to where we are today, just obviously gave a platform for so many more, just to be able to get shows on channels like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and then Discovery, all these other places that are now showing different types of TV shows even today. Back then, that was just beginning, but there was that platform for them. I mean, come on, it's 2021 and there's a platform for us too, schmoes. So it's like there's platforms for everyone now, man.
Yep, no doubt, man. And again, a lot of these were important, and this show definitely was important. That was a fly guy.
Yeah.
Fly guy. In Living Color. What do you know about In Living Color, KenMan?
I mean, there was a lot to this. I mean, this was a show that just brought some great comics that I already appreciated in the Wayans brothers, and showed us a lot of introduction to some different types of sketch comedy that would kind of just give you another edgy look, but absolutely humorous. I mean, the comedy was just one after another in these skits. And the thing with this show, I thought, is that they hit it from the ground running. Literally, that show was funny from sketch one, day one, and they built on it so well that the best part about that show would be, like we were talking about earlier, when these actors were able to make the other ones laugh, because these guys were really good. And when you knew it was funny, when one of these guys even just kind of cracked a smile on stage, because they were really trying to keep it together and always keep it real. But man, Living Color was absolutely spectacular show. The skits were great. They were able to utilize a lot of the same stuff over again, just again changing content, and they kept it fresh. They kept it funny all the time. I thought as for a while in that show. I mean, there was a time, obviously, it panned out, and that's because these guys leave, and when it's not funny anymore, it's because the people that are there are just not funny, and the writing has just gone to crap, like any sketch show. But when it was right, this show was as good as it gets in sketch comedy.
Yeah, groundbreaking stuff, man. Amazing stuff. Obviously, Jim Carrey, Keenan Ivory Wayans, David Alan Grier, Tommy Davidson, Damon Wayans, Kim Wayans, Jamie Foxx, Sean Wayans, Kelly Cofield, and Marlon Wayans. I'm not sure if you heard the Wayans name a few times there or not. It was a family affair with the Wayans, and they were all friggin' hilarious. Yes. And they are still hilarious. Damon Wayans Jr. is amazing, dude. The family line is hilarious up and down the board. Obviously, there was some stuff. There was some stuff that was amazing. Hi there, Vera DeMilo, baby. I mean, just being able to see that. That's just amazing. For real though, hi. Shit, I'm ready to go. Yeah, dude, there's just something about that stuff, man. Jamie Foxx, you just knew they were going to be big stars. They were already big stars at that time within that show. Yeah. But obviously, they went on to blow up and do amazing shit, man. I mean, I'm very, very proud of the time that we have grown up in. All the stuff we've been covering the last couple of weeks, sitcoms and stuff like that, leading up to what we're doing now. It's insane, man, how much amazing comedy we've been exposed to, man, in different ways and different kinds, man. We're quite lucky. We're very lucky. Obviously, Homie the Clown. Let me tell you something. Fire Marshal Bell. That guy. That was just some amazing stuff. It was one of the impressions I was able to do pretty well. So it usually killed at parties when people were drunk. And
now people are like, "Who is that?"
Yeah, like, dude, that guy. Whoever's doing the stupid voices with the pictures in the front is really killing the show. But yeah, In Living Color was groundbreaking, broke a lot of racial barriers. It was very important for the time. The reason why we are able to rest calm and do what we do comedically is because of a show like In Living Color. Right. And they went on to do a lot of stuff in the future. And speaking of which, there's some sketch comedy shows that spawn talent. Almost 90% go on to do amazing things. And I am a personal fanatic of this particular comedy troupe that was a very short-lived comedy troupe on MTV. And let's check them out. So when I go back, or even right now, if I'm going to mention what's some of the great comedy shows? The State. Did you ever watch The State? No. No. How the hell have you not seen The State? Well, I guarantee you've seen some of the people that were involved in The State. I'm going to ring off a few names for you. Michael Ian Black, Kerry Kenny Silver, Thomas Lennon, Michael Showalter, Robert Ben Garant, Ken Marino, Joe Latrulio, Kevin Allison, David Wayne, Michael Patrick Jan, and Todd Hollebeck. These folks went on to do amazing things and are pretty much running the comedic scene in Hollywood right now. Ken Marino, let's see. I know for a fact Tom Lennon, Ben Garant, those guys went on to do Reno 911, and that turned into Viva Variety at one point. I Love You Man, done by David Wayne. David Wayne's done a million things. Ken Marino's done a million amazing things like Party Down, all kinds of stuff. These guys went on to do some great things. Important sketches like, I'm going to dip my balls in it, which was one of those things that was made to sort of test the censors, where the censors weren't allowed. They would censor you if you used balls in the term of testicle, but if you held golf balls in your hand, you could get around it. So they were doing all sorts of weird shit on that show to sort of test the censors. Shows like Doug, like, hey, you're Dad and I'm Doug and I'm out of here. Like just weird shit. I loved it, man. They did a lot of killer stuff, man. I can't say enough amazing things about The State, man. They're one of those short-lived shows that just blew the hell up.
This show, absolutely hilarious. I was surprised more people didn't watch this show, but at the same time, I get it because I understood where some people are at with understanding this kind of humor, because this is another humor that's very intelligent and very difficult to do, but it can come off as being very simple. And sometimes people look at that as just being dumb humor, and they're gonna push it aside. They're not gonna find any humor to that. It's just that's trash humor. It's toilet humor. But this is not that. It's really, this is the kind of thought that goes into making the type of skits that The State did. Really is comedic genius. But at the same time, it's something that is going to come across differently with different folks, including myself. I know when I watched that show, there were episodes like, my cheeks hurt, just absolutely hilarious. And just thinking of some of this stuff right now while Bob was talking, I was just cracking up just thinking about it, because it's that good. It's really funny, because the guys that are doing it are hilarious. They sell it incredibly. Whether you like what they're trying to sell or not, they do. And you'll buy into the skit quick, but it's just whether or not you like the topic of that skit or what they're really trying to get at, or even, of course, what the punchline is and the whole joke of what they're doing, or even if there is one, because sometimes they'll just leave it kind of up to you, which is neat as well. But that type of humor, back to the beginning when I mentioned very subjective, certain people just kind of poo-pooed that and just washed it away. And I feel like that was part of why this show didn't get the type of ratings that I thought it deserved. And certainly, as Bob mentioned, where a lot of these actors went on to do, you could tell, I mean, they've had it. It was there. That show just didn't hit the way it needed to, I guess, as far as ratings go.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, Joe Latrulio is on Boyle on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, an amazing show. Obviously, David Wayne's out there doing a million things. Ken Marino's involved in pretty much everything David Wayne's doing. Just really great stuff. And again, Wanderlust is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's an amazing movie. They're all over that, and they've just done some amazing stuff. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard not to fall in love with what they did, and also the fact that my wife and I are huge fans of a show that is now gone called At Midnight, which Chris Hardwick used to host. And he actually had all of them back on one night because Thomas Lennon is actually the producer of that show At Midnight. So basically he got all of them to come back on and do a little reunion. At Midnight was a very important show. At Midnight broke a lot of comedians, and for some reason it wound up getting canceled. And then someone tried to cancel Chris Hardwick, so a bunch of weird shit from that. But The State, again, they just went on to spawn so much talent and so much amazing stuff. So I've got a lot of great memories of The State too. Well, we got some time left. We've got a couple more shows we're going to cover. This one, I think, very underrated. I am a massive fan of this, in direct competition with the show We Are Older Than. Ken, man, any memories of Mad TV for you at all? I
Absolutely.
think it's split. I think it's split for like, are you either Mad TV or SNL? But it didn't need to be that way, I don't think.
Well, that was the unfortunate, I think, ultimately even demise of Mad TV is that it had to go up against SNL, and that kind of made it difficult. So for that show, because people were having to choose, but I always liked the show. I thought it offered something different. It was fresh. It was new, but it just to me wasn't it. It didn't have the staying power, whether it was because of the actors on the show or the fact that some of the skits to me were just very kind of dry and dull and just wouldn't lead to really kind of anything that just I got excited over. There were plenty of good acts or plenty of good skits in the show overall, and plenty that are still talked about today. So they hit on some big ones, but I feel there were more misses with Mad, unfortunately.
I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. It went from 94 to 2000. Well, actually I guess it did run to 2016, but it was sort of dead between all that. But regardless, it started off with some amazing talent. And again, these folks turned into some great stand-up comedians and wound up being part of like the Mad TV alumni, if you will, of being part of the first one. But from left to right, David Herman, Nicole Sullivan, Phil Lamar, who does every voiceover you've heard in your entire life, I guarantee you. Deborah Wilson, Artie Lang, Orlando Jones, Mary Shear, and Brian Callen. All of these folks you know very well. They're still very active in comedy. The guy on the far left was made very famous from Office Space. I'm sure a lot of people might recognize his face. But they went on to have some amazing casts as well. Michael McDonald in the dead center. On the very bottom, Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, who's not pictured. Ike Barinholtz down there on the bottom right. Bobby Lee on the top right. Frank Caliendo, Aries Spears. These guys are amazing, and I've loved all of their sketches. They produced Alex Borstein, who's obviously gone on to be Lois Griffin on Family Guy. Just amazing stuff. There's just talent that came from this show, and if you listen to a lot of what they had to say, it really had. I think a lot of them felt like they were sort of constrained, and if you weren't loved on that show, your sketches didn't get on. There was always sort of that sketch comedy battle to get your sketches on, and it happened with SNL too. A lot of people do not have great memories of SNL because of that, but this was one of those shows that was like that too. But they just sort of allowed everyone to do whatever they wanted. Will Sasso, some of my favorite stuff is done by Will Sasso, Ike Barinholtz, and these guys. I love Mad TV as much as I love SNL, man.
Yeah, I don't think I could say the same for Mad TV, to be honest with you. I would definitely say SNL is the winner with that one. But there was a time where I think SNL just, it was everybody needed a break. So and Mad TV definitely gave you that and gave you a different option. And from time to time was absolutely hilarious, but it just wasn't consistent enough for me.
Well, what was consistent was the greatest sketch comedy show of all time. Chappelle Show. Can you let me do that? All right. We got away with that, I guess. Chappelle Show, man. Talk about it.
My favorite. This show, I mean, every skit hit. I mean, how is that even possible? But every skit hit. It's incredible what he was able to do, what he was able to put together with these skits. Now, this is a different setup when he does this kind of stuff that's not live skits. So in a way, these are things that he comes up with and he puts together, but that he does. So as some of the stuff is recorded. So, when you look at this show, you can't always categorize it. Maybe if you're putting something against another this way, but it's the way. It doesn't matter because this show hits on every skit. Everyone is funny. Every character is hilarious. He is spectacular, Dave Chappelle, what he does with this show. The people he brings onto the show are amazing. The musical talent that he brings onto the show is amazing. You want to watch every show. I haven't missed a show. I've seen every one, and it's a great show. That means we can go on talking about the different skits. The whites are hilarious. There's things that you want to talk about, doing stuff or saying things or crossing a border or going too far. This is going to happen. He's going to push every last envelope as far as he can push it. He's going to do anything he can do to make sure that whoever is in charge of what's allowed to go on TV is up all night trying to figure out whether or not they need to censor this guy or not, and the show or not, and what's being said. It's a lot of the innuendos, though. It's not that he just comes out and starts cursing. It's the ability to put this humor together in such a way that you're selling something that's happening in front of you without it actually being said. It's absolute genius. You want to talk about comedic genius? Right here, Dave Chappelle. He's at the pinnacle of it. And the man surpassed anybody who's able to write and do and put together sketches with this show. He proved that nobody alive is better. I haven't seen it. So to this day, this is the guy that puts together the right skits. And just like I said, watch it. If you haven't, you're living under a rock somewhere, but every skit hits, everyone. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to give it over to Bob.
Wrap it up, B. I don't even have that uploaded right now. Out of all the most primitive thing we've ever done, and I don't even have it anymore. I need to make it.
It's like day one we used that thing.
Dave Chappelle and Neil Brennan were amazing in this show. They both wrote most of this stuff. Charlie Murphy, obviously, rest in peace. Donnell Rawlings, Paul Mooney involved. Ask a black man. Bill Burr, Wayne Brady. Does Wayne Brady have to smack a bitch? You know what I mean? Like it's the sketches were amazing. The black white supremacist it has to be one of the greatest of all time. The black blind white supremacist. It's just I don't know how you come up with that. And I have been baked on levels that most people have not been able to understand, and I can't come up with that kind of comedy.
Right.
And I think you have to be a black living through a bunch of stuff that Dave Chappelle lived through in a very different sort of lifestyle to be able to come up with those things. Right. And he crafted it and gave it to us on a silver platter. God bless Dave Chappelle. The racial draft, just hanging out with Little John. Yeah. It's insane stuff, man. There's just really nothing better, man.
Oh man. I agree. I mean, like I said, we could go and talk about the episodes all day long, but we're not going there with this show. But this is the king. This is absolutely of what we talked about today. This is the king. This is, if you have to go back and look at anything, you watch these shows because they're worth it.
We've got some honorable mentions. You guys, if you want to throw some in the comments section, let us know what you thought we might have left off the list. We're going to throw a couple right at you right now. This show was actually created to have direct competition on ABC with SNL. They tried so hard to make this a bite of Saturday Night Live, but it didn't work. But we've got some very familiar faces in there. We've obviously got I keep forgetting what Kramer's real name is. Michael Richards. We've got. I mean, it's insane. They really didn't have a lot of funny stuff. I remember Fridays the most, simply because they had Kiss on one night to do one song from Music from the Elder. Which was really not great. But at the same time, it was one of those shows that came on and actually had some sort of comedic relevance, but didn't hang out too long. Benny Hill. Come on, man. We're going to talk about bras.
Yes.
We're going to talk about bras. Yes. Anybody who came up, you could just tap them on. It's just amazing stuff. You can't talk about sketch shows without Benny Hill. And that's what I was referring to when I was referring to being able to watch Monty Python, because I had already watched a shitload of Benny Hill, man. And it was very, very tame compared to Benny Hill. So
that's true. Yes.
Inside Amy Schumer, sorry, another great one, man. I don't know if you ever seen any of her stuff, but a lot of people, you either love or hate her. We actually saw her leather special that was taped live in Denver. Jordana and I went and saw that. It was great. Key and Peele, who are Mad TV alum, went on to do some great sketch comedy. They were also very hit and miss too. I'm not sure if you recognize these guys. Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. This show right here, we did some amazing stuff. Wild, Wicked Scepter, some great shit. Portlandia, obviously Fred Armisen spun off from SNL, but Portlandia went on to do some really quirky stuff, taking it all the way back to the sort of beginning with Rona Martin's Laugh-In, which I don't remember anything other than this.
No,
Goldie Hawn, very, very,
Goldie.
very gorgeous young Goldie Hawn, which is pretty crazy. This is another one that doesn't get a lot of talk. Ben Stiller show, by far one of my favorite. I own all of them on DVD. Jen Garofalo, Andy Dick, Bob Odenkirk, Ben Stiller. They did amazing stuff. The old man, do it. Yeah, no, do it. That was actually a 2 skits from this particular show. They had another skit called Ask Manson. Bob Odenkirk does an amazing, helpful Charles Manson on that one. If you haven't seen the Jeselnik Offensive, you have to watch it. I don't know if you'll ever be able to watch the Shark episode, but there's one that's been banned from television. Anthony Jeselnik is one of the greatest stand-up comedians alive. Super offensive and wonderful. Speaking of which, so is Richard Pryor from the Richard Pryor Show. We've got the Upright Citizens Brigade, which you're going to obviously recognize Amy Poehler from. Some amazing stuff happening there. Tim and Eric, awesome show. Another great show. Tracy Ullman show, which obviously spawned The Simpsons. There's just been so much that we were exposed to as young people growing up, and I don't know that they're the same, but they were great when we were growing up, man.
They definitely were. These shows, whether they were just shows that you would watch in passing and not really, like I said, understand some of the stuff because it was a little over your head. And what's neat about sketch comedy is that it is kind of 2-part. You're watching what they're actually doing because they're trying to sell an action or something that's happening within the sketch itself. It's not all about the background. It's really about the actor. And it's just, to me, you've got to give a lot of credit to these actors, all of them, what they do up there. It is so difficult to do the kind of work that they do, and especially in live studio audience, live sketch comedy. And it's incredible to be able to watch them and just professionalism, and to be able to hold a character and to be able to keep from laughing or even cracking up or breaking character. Some of the guys are great at it, just absolute naturals, where others, maybe not as much. But I give a lot of credit because I can understand how very, very difficult it is to be in front of a camera, period. But definitely is to be able to try to make comedy work. That is very hard to do.
It's extremely hard to do. It's actually something when you and I are hanging out, we have absolutely no problem doing, but for some reason it just does not translate to this podcast, and I do not know why. We're going to make some steps, though, and take some steps in order to make that happen, though.
Yes.
The future broadcasts are going to be a little bit different. We're going to kind of change the format up here, I believe, and maybe sort of go into something that I believe is maybe a little bit more mainstream, but more grabbable for everybody. And we appreciate everybody who has gone over to our YouTube page to go ahead and check that out. If you haven't done so, please go to YouTube, look up the Casually Serious Podcast, and please join and subscribe over there. If you haven't done so on Facebook, please do it over there. We had a great time bringing all this sketch comedy stuff. The last 3 weeks, we did 70s and 90s sitcoms for you. But like I said, I think we're going to switch it up here in the coming weeks. We might take a week off and start messing with the format. Not sure. We might spring it on you. But we've got some very, very loyal friends that have been hanging out since day one. And I just wanted to say hello to everybody who came out tonight. Bobby Mack, thank you so much. Tammy Manheimer coming out, hanging out as always. The producer, art director, coming out and hanging out with us. Eric Bisson, as always. Go Cowboys, baby. Good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out tonight. This guy, Jay, I don't even know. Jay, thank you so much for coming and hanging out, my brother. Love you like a brother because you are a brother. And Jordana. Can I call you Jor? Never mind. She loves Key and Peele. We do love Key and Peele. My wife and I, we love Key and Peele. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're loving this so much. We're going to try and figure out some really cutting edge, awesome stuff to try and change the show and switch it up for you guys. So anything you got to say before we get the hell on out of here, my friend?
No, again, just like Bob said, I appreciate you guys being here and checking us out. We are going to try to do things a little bit differently and just change it up a little bit. Try see if we can appeal to some folks that maybe wouldn't necessarily check us out. We're going to kind of just grab them and say, "Just watch us, okay?" And then we'll see where that goes. But we won't physically accost anybody yet.
As Ryan Reynolds said in Waiting, do you have a problem with full frontal male nudity?
Yes, we got all.
It might not come to that. It might not come to that. You should hope not. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us tonight on the Casually Serious Podcast, the sketch comedy showcase. We thank you for hanging out with us the whole entire time you have done so. We're going to go ahead and play the outro, and we're going to get the hell out of here. So we'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen, on TCSP.
From the 305 to the 303.
See? Listen, you're a freaking intern. This is the problem. You know, I told you, you don't do the freaking cutscene. You don't do the intro at the end of the show. Do you know what I mean? You don't do that. That's the problem. God, you know, if we don't pay you, there's a reason we don't freaking pay you.